Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Framon Bullseye Installation Tool for cylindrical lock sets. The name Framon is a very well-known name in the locksmith community. I would doubt that it's well-known outside of the locksmith community, as they supply key machines primarily to the locksmith community, a quite almost absolutely unique approach. Well, I think for Framon it would be a unique machine, their primary machine, but they have a number of different key machines, and they supply other hardware to the locksmith community. But if you're someone who might know the name Schlage, you may never have heard of Framon. Well, Framon is a multi-generation company, and the father invented the Framon. If someone says the Framon machine, we all know what that means. It's a type of key cutting machine that's hyper accurate, is easy to use once you understand how to use it, but to someone who doesn't know locksmithing might find it quite a challenge to figure out how that machine works. The son, who runs the company, does a variety of locksmithing related work, services, wholesale, distribution, and I believe even field service as well. Well, one of the things that the company does is they provide now this Bullseye installation kit for cylindrical locks. I have reviewed lots of such items, and so far I like this. So far it's not perfect. There is no perfect one that I've ever seen, but this is not bad. And I mean that only because, I say that only because I have prepped thousands of wood doors myself. So I know the job, I know what it takes to do it. I know what I'm looking for in a tool because I know what I'm going to have to do during the process of it. And this, I would make probably just one or possibly two upgrades to this. But at the end of the day, I would probably just alter this to suit my needs, and I'll explain that as we go through it. So this tool weighs 3.2 pounds, primarily aluminum, and has the features that you would use for typical lock set installation. So it's going to do 2 3/8, it's going to do 2 3/4, it's going to do 1.5 inch diameter holes, it's going to do 2 1/8 inch holes, it's going to do a 1-inch bore in the edge. If you're doing something smaller than that, yeah, that might be another upgrade, a third upgrade that I might suggest. This has got to be a 1-inch hole in the edge. Well, sometimes you like to drill a 7/8 or a 15/16, and that guide in the center, yeah, is for 1 inch. You're drilling 1 inch only. What I don't like about that is if you're mortising a 1-inch wide faceplate in the edge of the door, I don't want that hole to be the same diameter of the plate. You'll see a little belly peek out of that 2 1/4 by 1 inch prep that you've done. That lock, that's got a 1-inch wide faceplate. It's going to take either a 15/16 or a 7/8. I might have engineered that a little differently to allow me to do that stuff with maybe a bushing and a set screw that holds it in. Whatever, doesn't matter. But a 1-inch would always work. It's just, it's not what the template would say for those locks. But most likely you're going to be using this on 2 3/4, and that could take a 1-inch wide faceplate, or if it's commercial, it'd be 1.1 wide faceplate. So let's talk about what you're going to use this for, and then we will dive into some of the specific features of this Bullseye lock installation tool for cylindrical locks. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. So what you're going to use this tool for is exactly that. You're going to use it to prep for cylindrical locks. You can also do modified cylindrical locks as well, meaning the lever-through bolt holes. That would be appropriate when you're prepping for the most common of footprint for the lever-through bolt holes. The Schlage, or anyone who uses the same pattern as the Schlage ND or the old D or the AL or the ALX series. I admittedly don't use these. I may have used one once, and I realized this just takes too long. I have a very patterned way by which I prep doors for locks. It's easy, it's inexpensive, and for me, because I religiously measure twice and cut once, I almost never make an error in terms of placement. The tool, a lock installation tool like this, is favored by a lot of people, and I acknowledge that I'm in the minority view not using them. It ritualizes the process such that you're reducing out of the possibility lots of opportunities for error. When you've got a tool and all you got to do is clamp it on there and stick it on there, well, you can't make a mistake on the back set, that's for sure. It's always going to be at 2 3/8 or 2 3/4. These little flip knobs are what control. That's set for 2 3/8. Now it's set for 2 3/4. You're not going to make that mistake ever. So 2 3/4, right to the center of that hole. Okay. You do have to get the height correct. That's to be sure. But a lot of instances when you're doing a deadbolt, you're adding a deadbolt to something, to an installation, not super crucial. You know, it needs to be whatever you like. You know, 4.5 inch, 6 inch, 7 11/16, 48 inch AFF to center line, whatever you're doing, 6 inch center to center. So you're not super concerned about where that is. I mean, you should, me personally, I would standardize where I did that stuff. So that you knew of all the deadbolt preps you've ever done. Yeah, you do those at 48 inch, you know, AFF to center line. You know, you always do it at whatever that is. Or maybe that doesn't work. Maybe that deadbolt, that lock set's at 36 inch. Well, that's going to put it a lot higher than you would normally put it. You might say, you know what, I'm doing it at 5.5 inch above the cylindrical prep, and that's where I do it all the time. So you do have to measure the height, and you have to be confident that you're getting that correct. But I personally find that the amount of time it takes me to measure, get this clamped, tighten it down, you know, I'm already halfway drilled. Plus, I don't like how I'm putting a saw into these bushings or into the tool itself. The advantage of it, though, however, is that it does help you keep the bit straight, which is really handy. When you're drilling something this way, it's one thing. If you're using a drill press, you're not going to drill it crooked. So this helps keep the drill straight as well. You'll know immediately if you're drilling it crooked or at an angle that you shouldn't be drilling it at. I've told people who make a living in the field adding deadbolts for little old ladies who want some extra security on their basement door. That I don't use them. I don't see their value, and I think they take too long. And they've looked at me like, well, how do you do it? You know, you're nuts. You know, you should always use the tool. So to each his own. And I do strongly believe in the principle of the tool itself, because when I'm prepping a wood door, or you know, this would be great for fiberglass. You could technically use it for steel, but if you were going to use this for steel to do the through hole, I would probably never use it for anything but steel, because you're going to get micro particulate pieces of metal in here. You put that onto a wood door and you clamp it down, you're going to leave a mark, literally marks on the face of the door. You're going to be prepping a wood door. The advantage of the tool is that, as I had said earlier, it ritualizes the process so that you could, in just a few moments, teach someone how to use this and walk away. This person that you're teaching isn't a woodworker, doesn't know what they're doing, but they know that they've got to drill 3 holes. Okay? And this will help just, not to say dumb it down, but to reduce from the equation the possibility for having to think. And when you're having to think, you know, you do introduce the possibility of making an error. So if you were to even take it a step further and maybe modify this tool where, you know, you knew that you were doing deadbolts, you had 30 deadbolts to do, and you had 2 people and you had 1 day to do the entire job, you could have them, you could realize that the height of this is 3 inch, and you could, if you were going to go down to, say, you know, 32 and 11/16. You could deduct 1.5 inches from that. Don't quote me. I believe it's 3 inch. Don't quote me on that. I'm quite sure it is, but I'd have to measure it. You could take that, well, let's make it a round number, like 32.5. You could then say, I want you to go from the top of the door 31 inch down and mark a hole. Or, pardon me, not mark a hole. Take a pencil and make a light line. You can then drop this down and line the top of this up. with your prep, and you know that you're doing 2 3/4, if you wanted to even get stricter, you could put a piece of tape over this to restrict that from moving. Or it's hard for me to tell. I don't know if there is a screw that could be removed to remove the back set the gauges. If you wanted to even remove the possibility of that type of error, you could maybe tape those down or restrict them somehow. You could probably easily put something around all of that to restrict that. So now you're really dumbing down the process. You need to remember one thing: 31.5 inch. Put it on the door, line it up with the top, tighten it, tighten it, tighten it, drill your hole, drill your hole, walk away, go to the next door. Someone will come behind you and do the prep for with the hammer and chisel or the router. So the point being is that this material ritualizes the process. It helps you do the job absolutely correctly and reducing the possibility of putting it in the wrong place. You'll get, there's one thing to have a beautifully prepped hole. There's another thing to have it in the wrong place. To have it in the right place and a beautifully prepped hole in the right place, that's great. To have only one of the two is not so good. So this helps make sure that you get both. Other features of this, as I had said earlier, the back set gauges. This does not do 5 inch. There's no way for this to do 3 3/4 or 5 inch, 2 3/8 or 2 3/4. It will allow you to do 1.5 or 2 1/8. This is currently set up in the 1.5 sort of scenario. I'm going to show that to you. Now, what would you use 1.5 for? Well, if you're an old timer, you know that the Schlage B100 series, the B200 series, which they still make, the B400 series by Schlage, they would all do an 1.5 hole. Schlage does have modern deadbolts that will utilize an 1.5 hole. So that's the bushing for 1.5. Okay, held in with that set screw that's there. Take it out, and now you've got 2 1/8. Okay, so that's pretty easy. You don't want to lose those bushings. If they're available as a separate product, they will certainly be expensive. This is going to give you the Allen wrenches included. This will give you the guide, obviously, for the center line. Of your 1-inch bore that's going to go in there. I might be tempted to use an auger bit for that. A fly bit, I don't know that I would use this. I would probably use an aircraft, or a jobber's style aircraft bit or an auger bit for this. I like hole saws myself. That's what I use. They're cheap. They're effective. They do take a little bit of time because you have to work the core of your particle board door out of the hole saw. But you do half of it this way, half of it this way, and you're off to the races. And I've been able to drill scores of doors on a single hole saw. The bimetal Irwin hole saw, just a great tool for doing that. Auger bit for here, 1-inch diameter. So 1.5. Actually, you should have 5 cutting tools. 1.5. In this order: 1-inch hole saw, 1.5 hole saw, 2 1/8 hole saw, 1-inch auger bit, 1/8 of an inch aircraft style, just a regular 1/8 of an inch bit. Now, what would you use the 1-inch for? Well, if you're going to use the auger here, you don't need a 1-inch hole saw here, even though you could. The 1-inch hole saw is, after the door is prepped, take the tool off, clean it, put it away, take that 1-inch hole saw, stick it through the 2 1/8 into the 1-inch hole, and push it against the jamb, and that will mark the center line of your strike. So that's what you would use that for. The 1/8 of an inch is right through this hole here and here. These are 2 3/4 inch on center. If you look at the template for a Schlage lever lock that requires through bolt holes, and many other people that take that same footprint, you'll be able to have that once it's on the door. 1/8 inch, 1/8 inch, 1/8 inch, 1/8 inch, and now you're marked. And then you'll come back with what almost surely is a 5/16. Oh, you need the 5/16 as well. Sorry. So there are 6. So you'll take that off and you'll clean off the 5/16 holes is what you'll do with that. So there is. This does get into so other features of this. There aren't any. It'll clamp well to the door. The wing nut will tighten it. You're going to use the stabilizing bolt. You'll tighten this again. One thing to mention is that there are rubber pads on the inside of this. This is all rubber pad. The point is that when you clamp that onto a door, don't over tighten it, because you will mark or compress the face of the door to such a level that you can't see it. But we've done work in the past where we built 1 3/4 inch thick doors that were full louver. We manufactured, they were stile and rail doors, so we manufactured the stiles and the rails and all the louver slats. These were expensive doors. Looked beautiful. Went to the job. It was a men's clothing store in northern suburb of Illinois, and northern suburb of Chicago. And you can see on the louver slats, oh no, actually it was the face of the doors. You could see a line every 1 inch on center, or whatever it was. You couldn't see it before the door was stained, and they were poplar. But it was obvious that something marked the face of the door. Well, anyway, we were able to trace it back. Actually, it was our client who said, "Hey, how did you make those doors?" And explained the process. He's like, "Yeah, I think your planer is leaving a mark on the wood." And sure enough, we inspected the planer, and it was leaving a mark every 1 inch on center. As the wood went through, it was leaving a mark. Or it may have been the sander, I forget what it was. We had to go to the job site and resand all those doors, and had to take the charge back for repainting or restaining all of the doors. The point is when you over tighten this, you're going to leave a mark, and you may not be able to see it. So be quite mindful of that. Don't over tighten it, and clean it every single time. If you're still not sure that, if you test this and find that you're leaving a mark, you're going to need to investigate some means by which to stem that from happening. In the installation instructions, which we're going to go over in a moment, the manufacturer actually suggests you put paper over the face of this. You don't want to do that. The foam padding should be sufficient, but in reality, you could over tighten this to the point where you're going to leave a mark and you won't see it, so be mindful of that. One thing that I would do differently, and they do refer to it as centerline notches. I can't see it in this light, but right at the center line of where the holes are drilled and tapped for the set screws that hold the bushings in, you can't see them on the camera. Oh, I turned that off. Yeah, you can't see them. You can when you look at them and the light reflects correctly. There is a horizontal line right through that hole. And they call that the center line mark, I believe. So the question becomes is how are you going to locate this tool where you want it to be? 39 9/16 is where you need to drill the lock prep on a 6/8 commercial door to Steelcraft or Amweld or Kawani locations. How are you going to mark that? So what I end up doing is, in this case, I wouldn't worry about the back set. I would just hook my tape measure, come down, and pencil a mark, and then I would use my combination square and give me a nice light line across the door. Not a lot of it. Not a lot of pencil, because you're just going to have to erase it. You don't leave pencil marks. I did one time quite unintentionally, and a client really laid into me hard. He thought I intentionally did it out of a lack of regard and care and just being sloppy. That was not the case, but someone needs to erase that, and it's not your client. So the less mark you leave, the less you have to get that off the face of the door. So the point of all of that is you needing to determine how you're going to go about finding that vertical center line. There's different ways to do this. They could have put, I would have made that line heavier, is what I would have done. Or I would have added instructions to strike to the top and add the dimension required, which I've said it a couple of times. Yeah, it's going to be 1.5 inches. So, if you can remember to do that simple calculation, you'll add 1.5 inches to whatever your top dimension is, coming down to the top of the unit, and then you'll be right where you need. I don't like either of those because I don't like the second one because it involves math. The point of this is to keep you from having to think, because you just want to drill and move. I probably would have made a groove on the inside here, a heavy groove, like a chamfered or just a V groove, like a 3/32 deep V groove all through here, right to the edge. I could have come down, marked my center line, combination square, made a line that was like 4-inch, well, not even. I would have made a line that about 2-inch long, and I would just learn where to mark it, get it, you know, over in this area, and just lightly mark it, center it, and then you're in good shape. There needs to be a reference point. The other thing that could have been done is on the, I would have done this no matter what. I would have marked just the, what I like to do is not have to erase. So the tape measure to the top of the door on the stile on the edge, mark your location there. I would have then used a straight edge and made a line across the edge of the door, because when you mortise it, you're automatically erasing most of it when you mortise the door. I would have put a couple of grooves down in the middle there, down at the end in here, and I could have just then lined it up right on the edge of the door is what I would do. Yeah, or maybe in the tool itself, maybe a V groove on either side. Obviously, what could have been done is the bushings could have been modified as well to have the same V groove, such that the hole is drilled and tapped, and that your set screw would be longer and force this 1.5-inch bushing to be in the right horizontal location for your V grooves. So lots of different ways. But when you start prepping doors, you'll realize what needs to be done, what needs to be accomplished, what it's got to look like when it's all done, and how you get there. You can start to be creative as to how you get there. And what guides me generally is a laziness that actually is not lazy. It's just, what's the most efficient or economical way to get there? Do one operation rather than two every time you can. Don't erase when you are just going to prep there anyway. So far I like the tool a lot, and I will move. Let's move to the screen view now, and let's take a closer look at all the supporting information. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. All right, let's take a look and see what we have here. There's our tool with the Allen wrench, and just, that's your wing nut. Your bushing, obviously. Different perspective on it. This has nothing to do with any operation that you're going to do. It's a piece that allows you to, oh, you know what I didn't tell you is your minimum and maximum thickness of door. I don't believe it's indicated in the installation instructions. This part is just how the pieces are guided together. So I've closed the tool all the way down. It'll close down to 1 1/4 inch, and I'm going to open it up as I click through here. So 1 3/8 would be the right size for the maximum, for the minimum door thickness. When I open the tool all the way up, and what's really important to know is, you're always centering. Actually, we can talk about a pro tip as well. Top view, here's looking down the throat of the tool. I've opened it all the way up, and I can get it out to 2 3/4 inch. That's fun. Okay, so now let's talk about a pro tip. What if you had a 2 1/4 inch thick door, but the prep was not centered? What would you do? Well, what you would do is you would open the tool up, and you would add a shim inside of here, the appropriate thickness that you need to offset the lock prep to. The point of the matter is, you will, sooner or later, see a door. Sorry, bear with me. That's centered in the door. Well, you're going to have one someday that, for whatever reason, is not centered in the door. So you could add a shim and pad that out. That would certainly work for you. A little bit of a pro tip there, I suppose. You can also see these grooves. Actually, let's see if those marks show up in any of these photos. So this is also giving you 2 3/4. I don't know that that matters. It doesn't refer to these grooves that you can see in that photo. Yeah, so you can see it very lightly here and here. I would probably accentuate those if I was going to use that as a mark. So, you know, this is indicated on the instructions, and I'll show you what that is, where they're calling that out. A little bit light, though. The opposite side view. That's bolt number 5. We'll look at that in a moment. Here's your 1/8 inch hole here and here. The funny thing about those holes, if you're going to use them, is you're going to end up piercing through the rubber pad. Not a big deal, but just be mindful the first time you go through there, you're cutting through that rubber pad. If you're going to use them, I might suggest that you pierce through that up front rather than pushing rubber into your hole. Okay, the back side of the unit. I wouldn't mind score lines being through here as well. That would be nice. The instructions and the Allen wrench. Now, speaking of instructions, let's go over those now. If you've made it this far into this video, you must be determined to see it through to the end, and we appreciate your hanging in there with us and watching this entire video. It means a lot. It takes a lot of work to create these videos in the sense that, you know, it's time taken away from doing other things. However, the advantage for me personally of creating these videos is the fact that it does allow myself to either learn about something new, to reacquaint myself with something, or to reinforce what I believe that I already know. Any comments that you might leave down below would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. All right, let's take a look at the installation instructions here. It's really just page 1 and half of page 2. So use this tool when locating and drilling crossbore and latch hole when installing cylindrical locks, or tubular locks, or deadbolts. Before attaching your bullseye to the door, make sure that the surfaces of the jig are clean and smooth. The rubber pads, make sure they're clean. We've discussed at length why you want that to be clean. The tool has 2 rubber pads that will contact the door face. Be sure they are clean and free of anything that could scratch or mark the door. It's a good idea to wrap the door with a sheet of paper or thin cardboard prior to attaching the jig. If you find that this is a problem, you might want to rework the tool and get a piece of laminate that you have perhaps removed the, I've never done it, so I don't know if it would be a major hassle, but remove the pads, or order a tool and we'll request that the pads not be added prior to shipping. If you were to go in and put a piece of, glue a piece of laminate there with some stay put, that should work. Refer to the lock manufacturer's recommended specifications for the height and backset. Backset will be changed in the following step, and mark the door accordingly. Okay, mark the door accordingly. They don't tell you how or where to mark the door. We've discussed that. Open the bullseye by turning the wing knob counterclockwise so the jig is opened wider than the door thickness. Set the jig to the desired backset by flipping the backset tabs away from the door's edge for a 2 3/4 or towards it for a 2 3/8. Position the jig onto the door. Turn the wing knob, which is part number 1. This is the wing nut, clockwise until the jig is just touching the door, probably enough so it doesn't fall. Turn the thumb screw 5 in until it's snug against the opposite side plate 9. This is 5, this is 9. So now what you're doing is you're establishing the fixed thickness of what you're working on. Tighten the wing nut 6 to maintain this setting. Loosen the knob 1 and align the center line notch. See drawing with the height line previously marked on the door, and tighten wing knob 1 firmly against. So what they're saying here is tighten the wing nut, the wing knob, to where the unit's touching the door. Run the bolt all the way to the opposite side of the plate, then back the nut off to where you're basically locking it in position, so to speak. Adjust the height of where you are placing this tool based on the height requirement, then tighten the wing knob. So, it's pretty elementary once you've done it once or twice. I think reading the instructions is a bit convoluted the first time, or it was for me. So if the lock you're installing specifies 1.5 inch crossbore, leave the reducer bushings in place. If it specifies a 2 1/8, remove the bushings by loosening the set screws with the hex wrench provided. Don't remove the set screws, just loosen them and pull your bushings out. Put them somewhere safe. Sorry. Using the appropriate bit or hole saw, drill the crossbore halfway from each side. Don't drill all the way through the door, because what's going to happen is your hole saw or whatever is going to hit the inside plate, and you will damage it. Just halfway through. Next, drill the latch hole with the appropriate bit or hole saw. Loosen the knob so you drill the edge. Loosen the wing knob 1 full turn and carefully remove the jig from the door. Hint, the strike plate can be located by inverting an inch diameter hole saw into the latch hole. Shut the door and reach into the crossbore hole, and with a push and twist of the hole saw, mark the door jamb. J-A-M-B. An additional feature of the Bullseye jig is the 2 1/8-inch pilot holes to locate through bolt holes of many of today's popular lever locks. The holes are 2 3/4 apart and work with many popular levers such as Marks, Schlage, Yale, and Sargent. I don't know so much about Sargent. Sargent takes different preps, at least the ones I'm familiar with. Just let's do this. AL series locks. I'd like to show you one that's appropriate. Here we go. This is for a wood door. Absolutely. So this is what you're looking to prep with that. The point being is any that are at 12 and 6 that are 2 3/4 center to center or 1 3/8 off the center line is going to work. I don't think so about Sargent. Sargent's got holes here and here, and I think Corbin Russwin does as well. I'm quite sure of it, actually. But you'll get those 1/8 of an inch holes drilled. Before utilizing the pilot holes, be sure to check the lock template that the spacing is 2 3/4 or 1 3/8 from the center line. We recommend you use a small drill bit to locate the holes. Remove the jig from the door and drill halfway through the door from each side with the appropriate size drill to complete the through bolt holes. Page 2 talks about the parts, center lines, as were mentioned there, that were quite faint. Your back set locator tabs. Using the BL strap accessories for interconnected. I'm not familiar with any of this, so we will leave this for now. Okay, now, below this video, I think, Below this video will be a link to the manufacturer's page at some point. Actually, it might be under Framon. Yeah, it's not in the site just yet, but by the time you're seeing this video, we will have a manufacturer's page uploaded with a price and all these pictures and a link to this video and whatnot. Let's wrap up this video on camera. Regarding the links to ads that you might see in this video, we do apologize for any interruption to a smooth viewing experience, and hopefully the ads that are being presented to you are related to the base product. And if there is something, feel free to click on those and perhaps consider taking a look at what that other advertiser is promoting. Let's get back to the video. So I've got that opened up all the way. Seems to me to be a decent quality tool. I wouldn't hesitate to use it. I wouldn't hesitate to suggest that you consider it. And the reason is it does seem very well made. I can tell you that the person who is behind likely the design of this tool is a gifted individual when it comes to matters of locksmithing, matters of being a mechanical style type engineer. The gentleman is extremely focused in our industry, has always been extremely helpful, and has in fact gone well out of his way in many instances for us on projects. The third reason is that it's relatively inexpensive compared to the competition. You can spend a lot more money to do the same job. You can spend a lot more money to do the same job. You can spend noticeably more to get the same tool from another provider. So if you want something simple and straightforward, 160, 1 preps all day long, this is great. It really is. I would give it a try, and I would encourage, and I would be grateful for any feedback that you would provide about the tool. It is new to the market. It's the end of 2022. This is the very first one. I've had it on order since this summer, and I'm very happy to see it and happy to show you what it looks like. Let us know how it turns out. If any questions on the Bullseye Lock Installation Tool for cylindrical locks or any other Framon product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you. Thanks to our clients, Architectural Builder Supply is building an additional facility, and what follows is not only a look at the acreage that we're building the facility on, but also first the architectural renderings as they exist, or at least the architectural plans as they exist at this time. Thank you very much. Let's take a look. All right, let's take a look at the architecturals as they exist at this moment, or at least it wouldn't be proper to call these architecturals, but it would be proper to call them renderings in the sense of they're conceptual drawings, they're not renderings. So the entire space is going to look like this in terms of a site rendering. This will be a 22,000 square foot building, of which will have specific purpose areas. There'll be a workshop down here. This is a few thousand square feet that will be likely woodworking, metalworking, CNC, things of that nature. This will be an office area here, a private office area. This will be Architectural Builders Supply expanded storage area where we will be able to do fulfillment. The entire space in the center is going to be all of the volume, as I call it. Large components will be able to be stored in stock there. Machinery that's too large to fit otherwise may be put out here. Specific facility rooms, and then some recreation over here. Let's take a look at that drone footage, and thank you very much for taking a look.